Welcome, friends, to our public meeting of today. I'm Anna Oliveira from Alabama, and I'm happy to be here and spend this time with you. So, to get started, let's start with our initial prayer. So, let's close our eyes if that help us concentrate a little bit more and letting go of all the emotions that we might have had during the day. Let's try to think about our friend, our Master Jesus, and invite him to the space that we are in our homes or whatever we are right now, and ask him to bring his light and his peace to help us calm our hearts, harmonize our thoughts, and open our intelligence so that we can hear his voice, understand his message, and get the encouragement necessary to practice his gospel of light, of forgiveness, of love every day, in every moment of our lives. Jesus, thank you so much, and so be it. All right, friends. So we had a little change from the plan. So, today we're gonna talk about this section in this book from Divaldo Franco by the Spirit John of the Angeles called Life Challenges and Solutions. And I chose this little section that is more towards the end of the book, actually, called Being Awake. So that is our reflection for today. If you do not know, right, this book, Life Challenges Solution, is part of a series of books from the Spirit Joanna de Angelis that it's called like the psychological series. So, it talks a lot about transpersonal psychology that, it's a field of psychology that actually it's not that it talks about it, but it uses is based on this trans personal psychology. That is the part of psychology that considers that we are, more than just, a person, but we also are inserted, right, in these experiences that we have. So it considers all of those things while trying to understand the things of this soul. So one of the famous psychologists that actually uses the same method would be Carl Jung, right? And one of the examples in nowadays that you would think that you can associate, for example, with transpersonal psychology would be the practice of mindfulness, right? That a lot we hear a lot about that today. Biggest disclaimer, I'm not a psychologist, right? So, um, it's not my area of expertise, but definitely I think that, this message, I read it many times, and it always brings me a very good reflection. So that's what I wanted to invite all of you to, as we read this short part of this book today, we start reflecting and seeing how can we apply that to our lives, right? So the message or this section of the book, it starts saying like this, that humankind in general lives in a sleep state, in lethargy, and that is why people suffer the worst sickness possible. So there is our first thing to think about, or to try to understand. It's like, what does she mean by this, that we live in a sleep state? So do you all agree that we are kind of like this little girl here, and disease are going everywhere? I personally love to sleep. So maybe that's why I like this message, right? But we're gonna see what she's talking about, right? And we're gonna see if we what is I want you guys to think too as we go move forward. What is this idea of, being awake, right? What does she mean by that? What it really does that mean? But she says that we usually have this sleep state, this lethargy. And I really think that I agree in a sense when I reflect to myself that sometimes it's so hard to change, isn't it? It requires, it seems like so much energy, right? I'm Sometimes we just like things to be the way they are. And it's so hard for us to move. Sometimes, even if we suffer, sometimes it's hard to do the things that we need to do in order to change our own situations, right? Um, so I think that's what she's, trying to tell us here. And she says that the worst possible sickness is ignorance of ourselves. It's our of ignorance of our destiny and the meaning of our existence, right? We as spiritists, we value life so much. We know, and we have talked about in, other public meetings about the importance of this birth, right? This life here, this opportunity. But I don't know about you guys, but I can speak for myself. Most of the time, I'm not thankful. I'm really in this state of ignorance of the wonders that I am, right? As a person, not me, just on a personally, although you all know I'm wonderful, right? I mean, I'm great. Just kidding. But it's, as a human being, like the whole nature around us, all the laws that God has created, the meaning of our
Yes.
existence,
Is this
right?
our
Um,
I'm sorry. This is
Um, so this thing about the ignorance of ourselves, it remind me of something, right? It remind me of this question on the Spiritist book, the question 919 that talks about self-knowledge. And when Kardec asks, what is the most effective means for improving ourselves in this life? And for resisting the draw evil. And the spirits respond, a sage of antiquity has told you, know thyself, right? So, really, if we know ourselves, then we can live in so much peace, right? And we can progress so much faster, right? There's no way to know how to reach somewhere if you don't know first where you are, right? So if I want to visit you guys who live in North Carolina, I need to understand that I am in Birmingham, and because if I have no idea where I am, if I think I'm in California, it's gonna take me longer. I will have no, there are so many ways that I can reach the destination, but the most important thing is the starting point. So that's why it's really important to know ourselves, right? But also remind ourselves, and especially in these very hard times, about our destiny, right? That we are not here to suffer. We're here to learn, right? We're here to improve, and our existence is not to bring to be considered like a payback or a punishment, right? It's really an opportunity to flourish, right? And our existence is here as a step in this much better, much beautiful road that takes us to perfection. So Joanna continues saying that um, comfortable with their situations, people may complain, right? But they do almost nothing to change society's ills, ills that are often characteristics of themselves as well, due to their masochist need to inspire pity, they bemoan themselves, right? So uh, this really is stuck with me, right? And it made me remind of some, times where I heard from people who study, the soul, like the psychologists, right? um that when they say that sometimes we suffer, if we're suffering, if we're just complaining, is because we are not suffering a lot. The moment we really suffer, we will change. But sometimes we're suffering, but it's not still, we are not at our, our bottom yet. When we reach that of the suffering is really when we can get more motivation to change, right? And until I heard that, I've never thought about that. But if you think it might be like a very shocking at first to hear that. But if you really think about it in your life before, you can see that when it was hurting really deeply, you changed. But most of the time it was hurting, right? I'm not trying to not acknowledge that it was a hurt, but we as human beings have this capacity that when it hurts a lot, it pushes us to really do something about it. And this thing about changing societies is that she says that most of the time are characteristic of ourselves, right? So that's the thing too. Sometimes the suffering, or most of the time, and I think we already covered here in one of the previous chapters of the gospel, that the reason for the afflictions, right, the causes of afflictions, they are either on this life is something that we did or something from previous lives, but it comes from us. It's very nice or very easy, and is sometimes very comforting to try to attribute that responsibility to others, to the government, to God, to husband, to kids, to boss. But most of those sufferings, they come from ourselves, right? uh, she continues saying that people yield to circumstances out of self-indulgence. Look, just like, that's why I chose this picture. She's just just enjoying this ice cream so much, really self-indulgent there. And she even has her tiara just to have the ice cream, so I thought it was just great. So most of the times we are just there, right, in those out of self-indulgence, but we make no real effort to overcome any obstacle that may pose a threat or hindrance to our progress, right? So you also heard this before, right, that we can be our worst enemy sometimes. So you know uh that is made me think that I should be, right, working with myself or for myself, not against myself, right? But sometimes, the enemy is really within, right? So I just put some questions here in between these slides so that we can reflect. So you don't need to necessarily, answer this, but just to think about it. So as we hear what Joanna De Angelis just said, what are we not doing to aid in our own progress, right? So, what are some areas that we can work on? And she continues saying that unconsciousness prevails in the modern world because it gives into immediate gratification with no follow-up plan for attaining liberating emotions, right? So that's why it's sometimes is more convenient, is more comfortable to be in this numb or in this unconscious, instead of being aware, awake, right? Open eyes, knowing what's going on. Sometimes we want to be, and in this unconsciousness is almost like this sleep state, right? So we prefer to be almost like a little zombie than to be somebody who is really uh, open-eyed and knowing, having full control and full um, understanding of what's going on inside us and around us, right? She says that these unconscious state or these sleep states help us because give us an immediate gratification, and we don't need to do any extra work, right? Because if I'm aware, if I know, then I gotta do something, right? So if I can see clearly what is going on, then I'm more, it's like it's an invitation, right? It gets to that point that I have to act. But if I'm kind of sleepy, not knowing or still not awakened, then I have an excuse, right? So she says that this is why the society divided then in groups that grow further apart each day. But instead, we should be working together to eliminate separatist barriers and become aware of our infinite potential for self realization and spiritual awakening, right? So, this unconsciousness, it's really pleasant, because it kind of serves this purpose of not working and not doing the work that we need to kind of really bring the relationships with ourselves and with others to a better place, right? So if I'm just kind of half asleep, then that's okay if I keep going, drifting further away from people, isolating myself instead of being present and actually working, right? That's the thing, is work together to eliminate, to right, to polish all those areas that seem to separate us, right? And help each other, for all of us to fulfill this potential of self-realization and spiritual awakening, right? So there comes another question. Am I drawing closer or apart from my brothers and sisters? Am I a team player, right? Remember that the Christian person needs to be in the world, right? I mean, it's so easier to be Christian in a cave, right? And follow the morals of the Christ and the ethics of the Christ if there's nobody to bother you, right? Nobody to test you. I mean, you do whatever you want because there's nobody around to say anything otherwise, right? So are we drifting away from others and from ourselves too, or are we aware of the power and the necessity of working things together, right? Not saying it's easy, but it is the goal, right? And but Joanna keeps talking to us, but then she's saying that there is a time that we are not gonna be in this sleep state forever, right? I mean, this is almost like a maybe. And remember that Jesus says our yes has to be yes, our no should be no. So this thing, like in between, not here, not there, like I usually ask my students. I mean, when I ask a question, I say, so what is your answer? Yes, no, or maybe, right? So this maybe is very convenient, right? But she says that the moment comes when we are induced to either awaken or remain dead to reality, right? So it comes to a point that we kind of have to pick sides, right? Remember that the Christ has been calling us, right, for this awaken for a long time. He's telling to me in a very firm but calm, caring voice, Anna, my darling, wake up. It's time, right? And she continues saying here that in order to awaken from their heavy sleep, they must make every effort possible to break the chains of self-pity and unhappiness. self-deprecation and self-disrespect. So there's, I only put in italics there, but if this can be highlighted even more, I think that is a very big lesson for us, right? If we remember the biggest commandment, what is it, right? The greatest commandment. So Jesus, was out there and somebody asked him, right? What is the master? What is the biggest commandment? And what did he say? That it was to love God above all things and your neighbor as yourself, right? So you cannot love others if you do not love yourself. So self love is around this idea of awakening. I thought that was so interesting, right? That Joanna wants to present us this idea that this awakening of the spirit comes, right, with loving ourselves, with understanding and celebrating our potential. You might be thinking, well, but I don't feel that great right now. And that's fine because it's an awakening, right? It's kind of uh, it's a process. But if we use as an excuse for not going through this process, but then we start behaving with self-pity and unhappiness, self-deprecation, self-disrespect, that is not taking us anywhere either, right? So to come out of this sleep, to of this unconsciousness, kind of a spiritual sleep state, I need to love myself. I need to let go of self-pity, self-deprecation, and self-disrespect, right? Because we are all wonderful, right? So that's what we are. We are awesome, right? We are God's creation. So there's no place there for self-deprecation. That's not the truth, right? That is just a lie. So another question I want to talk to you about is, that I thought about is, what effort am I making or not making to break the chains of self-pity and unhappiness, self-deprecation, and self-disrespect? So that is for us to think. Then she keeps talking about, right, that what is hindering this awakening for us. She's bringing all these things, that these behaviors that we might be using, that is actually hindering that is holding us in that unconscious sleep state. She says being awake means a self-fulfillment. It's like, I am enough, right? Being aware of one's inner reality and the infinite possibilities for growth there are with one's reach. That it is possible, right? It means freeing oneself from the fears that keep one immobilized and in uselessness, rediscovering the joy of acting, broadening one's communication with nature and all living beings, multiplying the means of human dignification and making them available to everybody, and submitting oneself to the eloquent purpose of enlightenment found everywhere, right? So she's reminding us, right, that the truth, that the way, it's really this awakening, right? That we really need, it is this celebration really, and this awareness of all these infinite possibilities that we have for growth, right? Maybe don't feel that we are not there yet, and maybe we are, right, about that. But it's all about the possibilities, right? Is loving ourselves the way God loves us, right? He knows everything. He knows exactly what I'm doing, what I'm thinking, right? What I'm feeling. But he's not worried about this because, he's thinking, he knows my potential. That's what he holds on to. But why, if God sees me this way, why am I holding myself back and I'm seeing things that God, that is the the supreme intelligence, right? That is the pure wisdom, does not see it that way, right? And this thing about letting go of our fears, right? And fear is really that it just immobilizes, right? And then we cannot actually work on changing all these things that are inside of us, or actually following this path of growth, and reaching those infinite possibilities that are that are found everywhere, right there. It's calling us. So another question is, what are my fears that impede me to be spiritually awakened, right? So that's another reflection we can do. And Joanna keeps talking and she brings some examples. I mean, this one, she brings actually a Bible citation. So she says that Paul, the Apostle Paul, was so convinced of the value of awakening to consciousness that in Ephesians 5:14, he exclaims, "Wake up, you who sleep, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you." Right? So we have to do our part. See how Paul says, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you, right? But we need to do our part. We are fully supported in this process, right? Because we are here in the call, wake up, because Christ will shine on you. So everything is ready for us to help us in this process. But it's up to us to take that first step. We have to do our part too. She says, this is because sleep is a form of death, a wasted educational, enlightenment, therapeutic, or enriching opportunity. So the more that we stay in this sleep stage or in this unconscious, instead of facing the reality and changing our idea of the reality, because remember, the reality, even though we might not be seeing it right now, is that it's good, right? We are good. We have these infinite possibilities, and there's so much that we can achieve, right? So staying there, it's really a wasted opportunity, right? In this sense, she says, when individuals are awake, Jesus illuminates them so that they may advance courageously in their search for self-identification. I think this is just beautiful, right? I don't know about you, but I really think. So once we take the first step, then Jesus, shines on us, like Paul says, then Joanna D'Angeli says that too, so that we can you know, go on this journey for self identification. Then we can change all these paradigms and all these very conflicting and confused views of ourselves and others, right? Then now, there's no self pity, no self deprecation. There is self identification. I'm an immortal spirit, right? I'm a creature, I'm a son or daughter of God, right? And she says that all victors, right, have been persons awakened to their endeavor and commitment to life, aware of their own worth without sentimentality or psychological flights of self-deprecation or and self-punishment. Unfurling the banner of courage, they enter the battle, overcoming vices and developing virtues on the immense field of the conscious, like Krishna proposal to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, that marvelous canticle of psychological dignity and saga about Victor over his own passions, right? So Joanna D'Angelo is a very intelligent spirit, right? So she brings a lot of other references, really showing us this awakening is a universal truth, right? Because it is in many different cultures and bringing this idea, but I thought it was very interesting that she talks about courage, right? So the ones, because we were thinking, well, I might be so far away, but then she's telling us what the victors, right? What the people that actually were able to awaken, right? What do they have? And then she's telling us courage, right? And can you imagine someone saying that they are Christian but not having courage, right? I mean, courage is what the early Christians showed us. And today, in many places, at least as Christians, we do not need to be fighting for our lives, but we do still have this very big spiritual battle, for our own progress and to help the progress around us, right? This thing too, see, she says that the battle is what? The battle, so we need courage to enter this battle of overcoming vices and developing virtues. So that is work, right? So overcoming the vices and developing virtues requires courage, but it also requires work, right? But sometimes we are, we like, I think, also this unconsciousness kind of a sleep state because it's kind of a lazy state, right? It doesn't require much work. But remember, the work, it's what's going to help us, right, to overcome. If there's no work, then there's no merit at the end either. She continues saying that awakened individuals do not allow themselves the cunning of Sisyphus or the cruelty of Zeus. So those are, gods in the Greek, right? Mythology. These characters, they felt the need to display their strength and power in the fragility of the immature and unconscious human being. So I understand this as she's telling us this awakening, right? It's not through violence, right? It's not. And she's going to give us some other adjectives later, that it's peaceful, that it's light, or, bright. So this is, I think, using this reference to tell us that this is not supposed to be a violent process, right? And then she talks about, makes this reference about, that when Buddha became Buddha, right? When he allowed himself to be enlightened by awakening from his lethargy, one of the disciples asked him a lesson. So one of the disciples asked the Buddha, Lord, have you found God? And if so, where? And Buddha answered to him, after penetrating my own reality, I found God in my innermost being, in great serenity and dignifying activity, right? So, serenity, that ability to accept things, right? Resignation, right? That I try to change my situations as much as I can, but if I tried everything that I could, I'm in peace with that. I'm serene, right? I'm calm because I trust that then if I did everything that I could, now it's all up to the work of God, right? If I already took my step, then now is that support system that comes from Jesus, from God, right? From the highest spirit. But you see, I love when he says that is in great serenity and dignifying activity. So it's not just a passive. Again, it's not that sleep unconscious stage. It's an active. It's an awake, stage. She says that when individuals are awake, victories and discoveries are internal, right? We sometimes spend so much time trying to conquer the outside. But the awakening process, it's really related to our internal victories and discoveries. And here she says, resplendent and peaceful, powerful as lightning, yet gentle as a morning breeze. I thought this sentence was so poetic and it was so strong. It was so vivid that that's why I put these pictures here. So she's saying, once we are awake, the victories and discoveries are internal, they are resplendent, right? And peaceful, powerful as lightning, yet gentle as a morning breeze, right? It says bearers of life, they lead other people to self-assurance, enabling them to understand those who remain asleep, who have no interest in self-awareness or the end purpose of existence, right? So it's again this thing, because I love myself, it's easier for me to love others, or it's easier for me to truly love others, because knowing these difficulties in myself, knowing what it takes me to overcome them, I can understand why, maybe I don't agree with what people do, but I can understand why they did that, right? I don't agree with the act, but I can understand how they came to that conclusion or to that act, right? And then she says that they do not become irritated, wary, or upset with those who assail, persecute, or seek to afflict them. I mean, can you imagine this state of blissfulness, right? It's like, it's like everything is okay, right? It's all right, right? It's this peaceful state. It's knowing how wonderful I am and how wonderful everybody is going to be. Is this mutual help and understanding, right? Is this very peaceful state. I follow one monk from Brazil, and sometimes she says that once we see, these difficult people sometimes, that we say, oh my gosh, like, and we have no words. She said we should just be thinking like one day that person also is going to be Buddha, right? Because from Buddhist, that's what she believes. But isn't that really what Joanna is talking to us about here? Is this acceptance of ourselves? Is this recognition that we are wonderful, and this naturally acceptance of others too, the way that they are, that that whatever way they are or we are is just a temporary state, because the permanent state, remember, all those potential, the infinite potential possibilities is what is actually the self, right? That's really where the essence is, right? um so um at this point, and also as I'm reading this message, it made me think also about how spiritism is in my life, right? Because all these things that spiritism teaches, it brings me much more closer to this um you know state of peacefulness, right? Than the other way around, right? Because it tells me the purpose of the suffering and the destiny of the earth. So explain things to me and consoles me and brings me hope. So it motivates me to actually do better every time, right? And here, towards the very end of the message, we are almost finished. She um, talks about some examples. To me, is like, if I had to translate this, is like now she's trying to give me drastic examples of awakening, right? To see, oh, do you know? Remember, this is the awakening to help me understand what it is. So and that's why I chose this first picture. But here you can have so many pictures. You can start imagining as you're reading the message. So she says that upon meeting Jesus, Mary Magdalene awoke from her madness and was completely transformed, right? So if we know the history of this character in the Bible, we can see how she turned totally. And if we keep reading, was her life after that, after this awakening, of this transformation, great? So let's say that before it was not, right? The outside, she was still, working, and I think she's the one that died with the lepra because she was helping other, people with that disease. But that peace that she had inside, right, that is the awakening, right? So it doesn't matter what's happening in the outside, I'm content because I know that I'm enough. I know that I'm cared for. I know that my destiny, it's perfection, is happiness. I know I'm not alone. I know I am supported. So that it is so powerful, really, right? Powerful, very powerful like lightning, but gentle as the breeze, right? And then she talks about Paul of Tarsus. I mean, what kind of transformation was that, right? That he woke up after Jesus called him and he was never the same afterwards, right? Also, his transformation, remember, he got blind and then he got better, and then all his friends didn't like him anymore. He had to rethink a whole lot of things, right? It was a very drastic awakening, and very, but it's not like it was all, all, it was not dandy, right? It was not all like flowery and all sweet and everything. It was work that he had to do too, but he was supported every step of the way, right? So she says that Francis of Assisi accepted the master's invitation and was reborn, abandoning the old man to become nature's cantor. That's another also transformation, very drastic, right? And then she also talks about that, many others, like in various fields of thought, science, art, religion, and love, they changed the course and lifted humankind to a level of greater beauty and broader happiness. So many of those people probably felt a little bit isolated, but they were not isolated themselves, right? They kept working in what they believe so that they can actually, fulfill whatever mission they had, right? So it was not easy, it was not subtle, but we can feel that power, that power of the lightning, right? And that breeze of the sweetness, or the subtleness of the breeze, right? In those spirits, when they had that awakening, right? So, uh-huh. Mm-hmm. 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 And then she finishes the message saying that being awake means to evolve, free of prejudices and limitations, right? So remember, all these limitations are ours. I don't know if you have seen this picture. It circulated a lot on Facebook in Brazil, and it is a horse that is stayed there, that is, immobilized there. He's tied by a rope, but to a small chair, but he still stays there. So sometimes this limitation is in our head. So that horse thinks that he's tied to something and he needs to stay there, but he has so much more force that he can really, he's so powerful, he can just drag that chair very easily, right? But he stays there. So, free of prejudice and limitations, open to the good and to the truth, for which one has become a trailblazer and disseminator, right? So, with this talk, I really wanted to bring us some things to think about and some reminders, right, of how wonderful we are and that our destiny, even though sometimes it sounds or it seems and it feels so confusing outside and so chaotic and so random, and sometimes inside too, that is not the truth, right? The truth is really that we are supported, that we are, you know that we are cared for, that we are loved, and that we are really wonderful creatures that have those infinite possibilities and an immense potential, right? So, you know, in reminding all of us of this, I really wish that you have the peace that Jesus brings, right? In your life, in your work, in your home, everywhere you go. And remember that that peace that the Christ brings is that peace that goes beyond any understanding, right? It's really powerful like lightning, but very subtle, very sweet, like the breeze, right? So this is what I had to share with you guys today. And I don't know if anybody wants to make any comments or anything, if anybody has any questions. And if not, we'll go ahead with our passes. Thank you.
So make sure that you have some water nearby to be blessed as we prepare for the passes. So let's close our eyes and let's take a moment to meditate, to calm down and go inside of ourselves, to receive the blessings of the passes. Keep your water nearby so they can be blessed by the good spirits who will be with us tonight. And we begin our pass now by breathing slowly and deeply, relaxing our body and relaxing our mind, letting go of all worries and anxieties in this moment, and raising our thoughts to Jesus as we tune in with the good spirits that are here with us, placing ourselves in prayer. We ask God now for the presence of our guardian angel and the friendly spirits to be by our side in this moment. And we also ask them to assist all of the brothers and sisters here today in the physical and in the spiritual realm. Dear God, please allow us all to receive healing rays for all physical and spiritual ailments, to stop any action of illness in our being through the application of vibrations and rays of light all throughout our being. We now proceed to the dispersion pass, and we mentalize a beautiful crystal clear waterfall falling over us, full of blessings, involving our whole body, removing all negative energy, thoughts, and feelings. We feel our crowns open and this beautiful waterfall flowing inside of us and cleaning our mental field, our physical body, our organs, cells, our centers of force, and washing away all unneeded energies. We allow this cleansing waterfall to disconnect any hurt and anger, guilt or sadness, frustration, afflictions, or anxiety. We allow the action of this cleansing by placing all of our difficulties and sensations into the hands of the emissaries of Christ. We feel ourselves spiritually clean. We ask the good spirits to involve each one of us in this moment and to involve the entire environment of our homes, to open the doors of our home to cleanliness and releasing all feelings of selfishness or possessiveness. May this water clean the spiritual environment of our home from all forms of ill thoughts and feelings so that we can harmonize ourselves with our family members. Dear God, embrace our hearts, giving everyone good intuitions and freeing us from all evil. Thank you, God. We know that you hear our prayers. We thank you for listening and for taking action. We now, with a heart full of gratitude, proceed to the replenishing path. Full of gratitude, we just give thanks for this beautiful spiritual cleansing that already has us feeling lighter and brighter. And we start this strengthening phase to restore our energies. We ask you, dear Jesus, to approach us now and to place your hands over our heads, allowing the golden light of your love to fall upon us from your hands. We open ourselves so we can feel these rays of infinite love, restoring our whole being and re-energizing us morally, spiritually, physically, emotionally, mentally. We visualize the team of spiritual doctors around our physical and spiritual body, bringing us so much light. We feel the light that we are receiving, and it's providing this beneficial and strengthening energies. And we receive also through our breath, through the pores of our body, and through our thoughts. We feel this light strengthening our immune system, restoring to balance all of the organic activities, bringing encouragement and well-being to our body. We thank Jesus and the whole team of good spirits, asking for this light of healing and blessings for all humanity, to also involve all of those who are sick, who are suffering, who are also have no one to pray for them at this time. We unite our thoughts now in love and in peace to be an instrument of support so that the good spirits can act on everyone who needs it. We unite our hearts in a field of love to be an instrument of support so that all of the brothers and sisters who are suffering from prejudice and oppression would also receive love and peace. At this moment, we imagine the hospitals and everyone there receiving healing support. And we ask the good spirits to please visit the homes of those who are sick and those who remain silent, that are still feeding the action of imbalance. We know that God acts in all of us and he answers all prayers. May his will be done. And may the water that we have set upon our tables now be blessed by the hands of our good spiritual brothers, these workers of Christ who are bringing all of the benefits we have prayed for to our spiritual and physical bodies. Thank you, God. And we now close in prayer, remaining in this beautiful energy of the past, with hearts full of gratitude for all of the good spirits, for our guardian angel, for the mentors of the house, for our friend Jesus, for the presence of all this love, all this beautiful energy. And we give thanks for the wonderful lecture that we heard tonight, for the beautiful lessons. And we ask you, dear Jesus, help us to wake up. And when we wake up, help us to stay awake, that we would be awake and aware to the necessary transformation that is in front of us, and that we would be strengthened mentally, physically, spiritually, and morally to take action, to do the work, to transform ourselves spiritually, mentally, and physically. Dear God, we ask for blessings for each and every one of our brothers and sisters that have been here today on the physical and on the spiritual realm. And we ask that the peace of Jesus would stay with each and every one of us. May God bless us all. And so it is.